Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the show that really cracks open these complex global stories, get you those crucial insights you need. And today, wow, we are plunging into something that feels like it's ripped straight from a thriller movie, a high-stakes corporate drama. Just picture this. A city born from just pure, audacious ambition. A shimmering, mirrored line stretching right across a vast desert, promising utopia. This wasn't just some vague dream. It was a vision, and it came with a price tag. A staggering $1 trillion. But what happens when that grand design, that futuristic marvel, well, what if it starts hitting a very real, very hard wall? We were talking, of course, about NEOM. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's MBS's huge, audacious pet project. It's the absolute centerpiece of Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030, a bold declaration to redefine an entire nation. And its iconic core, the line, remember that, pitched to the world as this 170-kilometer-long, 500-meter-tall linear city, a testament to what's possible when, well, seemingly limitless funds meet just unbounded imagination. Yet, for months now, the whispers, they've been getting louder. Reports of delays, financial tremors, murmurs of internal problems. They've definitely grown beyond whispers. It's more like a roar now. So today, here on Meridian, our mission is simple. We're embarking on a deep dive into the very real, very raw data behind this colossal undertaking. You sent us this incredible stack of sources, articles, intelligence briefings, financial reports. Honestly, it reads like some kind of top-secret dossier. It details this grand plan now battling, well, unforeseen forces. Our mission, cut through all the hype, examine the cold, hard facts, extract every critical nugget to uncover precisely why this dream city is now facing its ultimate moment of truth.
Yeah, and what truly strikes me about this whole saga, this unfolding drama, is just how rapidly the narrative can shift. When that raw ambition slams headfirst into economic reality. This isn't just a story about concrete and glass out in the desert. It's a high-stakes gamble, a gamble on a nation's entire future. It's pivot away from oil, which is huge. And perhaps most critically, it's tied to the personal legacy of its leader, MBS. The global ripple effects from this project, everything from international finance to regional geopolitics, they could be enormous. We are undeniably at a critical point here.
Absolutely. And to really get this drama, our sources show this deep split, a real schism in how people see NEOM's fate. So we're going to put two powerful viewpoints head-to-head today. On one side, you've got the relentless realist, laser-focused on the cold, hard numbers, the immediate challenges. And on the other, the visionary globalist, someone who sees long-term strategy, inevitable growing pains. This is where the tension really builds because the data we've dug into presents a truly thrilling dilemma. So prepare for an active discussion, maybe even some fireworks, because the future of NEOM is anything but certain. Okay, before we plunge deeper into this unfolding drama, make sure you're subscribed to Meridian. We do more deep dives like this into the stories shaping our world. And hey, hit that like button if you're ready for the truth.
Right, so let's set the scene. We need to go back a bit. Cast your minds back to 2017. That's when NEOM just burst onto the global stage. And it wasn't just some quiet announcement. It was like a thunderclap. Heralded as the crown jewel, the absolute pinnacle of Saudi Arabia's ambitious Vision 2030 plan, the initial budget, an eye-watering $500 billion. Now, that wasn't just a number plucked out of thin air. It was a sum chosen very carefully, designed to signal undeniable, unwavering commitment. A message to the whole world. It was basically a declaration. Saudi Arabia wasn't just serious about transforming its future, it was going to be utterly relentless in pursuing it. And the vision itself was just breathtakingly clear. Forge a globally competitive economic zone right out of the desert sand, from scratch. And think beyond the usual industries. NEOM was conceived as this powerhouse, right? Cutting-edge energy, advanced tech, luxury tourism, groundbreaking biotech, forward-thinking manufacturing, all of it. The goal was explicit: radically reduce the kingdom's dependence on hydrocarbons, something they've relied on for centuries, create a truly diversified, knowledge-based economy. So, from the very beginning, NEOM was always about more than just building a city. It was about forging a whole new economic identity for the nation, a modern one.
And right at the beating heart of that new identity, the absolute pinnacle of this urban reinvention idea was the line. We all saw those promotional materials, didn't we? Those incredible renders promising a literal new dawn in city living. It was formally unveiled between 2021 and 2022. Described in terms that were almost mystical, a cognitive city where AI would orchestrate basically everything, every amenity, every service, daily life. It was touted as nothing short of a civilization revolution. Seriously, just try to get your head around this. A city 170 kilometers long, that's what, 105 miles, yet only 200 meters wide. Just stretching across the desert, standing 500 meters tall, with mirrored facades gleaming in the sun. Designed to house, get this, 9 million residents within its sleek walls. The pitch was just mesmerizing. completely car-free, zero carbon emissions, connected by one of the world's fastest high-speed trains end-to-end in just 20 minutes, and every amenity, parks, schools, workplaces, all promised within a 5-minute walk. It wasn't just the future, it was pitched as the ultimate, hyper-efficient, ecologically sound future, right here, right now, in the middle of the desert.
And if you zoom out, look at the bigger geopolitical picture. NEOM was absolutely crafted to be Saudi Arabia's grand statement, unequivocal, on the world stage. This wasn't just about diversifying the economy for its own sake. No, it was deeply, fundamentally intertwined with national prestige. And yes, the personal legacy of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, it feels like it was about positioning MBS as this transformative, visionary figure, on par with historical nation builders. Think Lee Kuan Yew in Singapore, or maybe even Ataturk in Turkey, people who fundamentally reshaped their society. So this really brings up a crucial question, doesn't it? Was NEOM designed more as this enduring monument to image, to soft power? Or was it meant to be a sound, sustainable economic venture from the start? Often, with projects this massive, the line between those two things gets very, very blurry. But beyond just the image, NEOM was definitely conceived as a massive capital attraction platform, unparalleled, really. The idea was to create this irresistible magnet, right? A beacon to lure not just quick speculative cash, but long-term strategic foreign direct investment. And crucially, global talent, the best minds. It was about meticulously rebranding Saudi Arabia, shaking off that perception of just being an oil producer, establishing it as a dynamic hub for innovation, a place where the world's brightest, from tech gurus to biotech researchers, would want to live, work, create. And then there's the soft power angle. The geopolitics, you really can't overstate this. The strategic decision to bid for and host these mega events, like the Asian Winter Games in Trojena in 2029. And the even bigger prize, the FIFA World Cup in 2034. These are far more than just sporting events. No, these are masterstrokes of strategic diplomacy, calculated moves to redefine influence in the Gulf region, showcasing Saudi Arabia's new capacity, its infrastructure, its global reach. It was a massive, unprecedented bet on a future totally beyond oil, a gamble on becoming a global leader in these new economies.
Okay, but now let's drop the bombshell, the data. The stuff our sources have meticulously pulled together, the kind of intel that sends shockwaves through boardrooms, that impossibly grand 170-kilometer dream, the line, the one promising to redefine urban living for 9 million people. Well, it has shrunk dramatically. By 2030, instead of 105 miles of mere utopia, our sources are revealing only 2.4 kilometers, that's just a mile and a half, is now expected to be built. Can you imagine? The shockwaves, ripping through the original visionaries. I mean, what does this even mean for the whole concept of the line? A line that's only a mile and a half long. And it gets even starker. That original 2030 population target for the line, 1.5 million people, which was already ambitious, has been savagely slashed down to less than 300,000. That's less than a quarter what they initially projected. And even more sobering, official sources inside the project. They're now privately acknowledging the full 170-kilometer completion might be pushed out, not just by years, but potentially decades. Unofficially, some estimates are whispering maybe up to a century.
Now, for context, the Guardian newspaper actually reported this tempering of plans over a year ago. So the writing was maybe on the wall. Think about it. A desert blank slate, meant for 9 million people eventually, now expecting barely 250,000 on this tiny, almost symbolic fraction of its length by 2030. What does this do to the credibility of Vision 2030?
Yeah, it's a mess. And look, this isn't just some minor belt tightening. What we're seeing here feels like a dramatic, almost brutal recalibration. It signals deep, deep fiscal pressure. And the financial data that triggered this scale back, it's crucial. It paints a picture of reality really setting in hard. Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, the PIF, right?
Yeah.
That's the colossal sovereign wealth fund backing NEOM, manages over $900 billion, while they impose spending cuts of at least 20% across their entire portfolio in 2025. And for some other giga projects under the PIF, budgets were slashed by as much as 60%. That tells you the scale of the pressure across the kingdom's whole investment landscape. We're seeing this hit NEOM directly, and it hurts. Lower oil revenues are a major factor. You can't deny that. Yep. Saudi Aramco's dividends to the PIF, that's a critical lifeline for these projects. They were effectively halved, down to $85.4 billion in 2025. Less cash flowing means less money for these mega projects. Simple as that. We even saw a huge $5 billion NEOM contract, one set for late 2024, just quietly canceled, unceremoniously. That wasn't a minor tweak, that was a significant cut. And the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, they've stated Saudi Arabia needs oil prices at $90 a barrel just to balance its budget without dipping into reserves. In April 2025, Brent crude was trading significantly lower, around $64 a barrel. So this financial strain, this gap between what they need and market reality, it's already led to hiring freezes. And unfortunately, layoffs for giga project staff across the board, it clearly signals the limits of the PIF's ability to just self-fund everything, especially when the oil market dips. It's a very harsh dose of reality setting in.
And then there's this sheer internal turmoil. The kind of boardroom drama that, frankly, would make any CEO just wince. Our sources reveal not just whispers, but outright allegations of management mayhem behind those mirrored walls of NEOM's executive offices. A PIF internal probe launched in spring 2024 uncovered what they starkly described as financial trickery. Now, that's a term suggesting, well, a range of unsavory practices, right? Inflated invoices, maybe misdirection of funds, who knows? Plus, egregious overspending on external consultants. This actually prompted the Saudi government to bring in external corporate investigators. That's a clear sign of deep mistrust, isn't it? To audit NEOM's books, their procurement processes, and we've seen dramatic shakeups right at the very top, indicative of deep internal disarray. NEOM CEO Nadmi Al-Nas, a very prominent figure, she was fired late 2024, apparently following a particularly botched launch event for the luxury Sindalah Island, which was meant to be an early win. And insiders reported Nasser had even brazenly bragged about driving workers like slaves. I mean, a shocking statement that circulated quickly.
The whole Sindalah fiasco reportedly embarrassed the Crown Prince directly, prompting Nasser's swift, unceremonious exit. Okay, let's just unpack this for a second. Financial trickery being investigated. A CEO allegedly bragging about exploiting workers. This sounds less like visionary urban planning and, well, more like a high-stakes corporate thriller just unraveling in real time. It truly makes you wonder what else might be going on behind those closed doors.
It really does. And what strikes me here is this brutal collision. Grand, almost utopian ambition crashing headlong into grim, tangible reality. And how that clash is hitting investor confidence hard. Foreign direct investment FDI into Saudi Arabia actually fell 21% year-on-year in Q3 2024. That is not a good sign. Many global investors, the very partners NEOM desperately needs, they remain deeply hesitant, wary about pouring their capital into the project. A GCC-based real estate advisor, speaking anonymously to our sources, put it pretty bluntly, said many PIF-driven plans simply don't make economic sense to private investors. They're wary of NEOM's unproven business model, its unprecedented scale, and yeah, maybe the underlying governance risks too. And then you have the human cost, which quickly becomes a significant and very public reputational risk. Our sources bring up then there were whistleblower reports alleging Saudi officials had something termed a license to kill to clear NEOM's vast site. Just awful allegations. There have also been claims of maybe 21,000 migrant worker deaths in the country since 2016, though Saudi authorities have vehemently called these numbers misinformation. Now, to counter this growing negative story, Saudi Arabia launched this massive global PR push, inviting investors to see construction progress firsthand, sort of damage control. There's this Ground X initiative, meticulously capturing millions of construction photos, a show don't tell transparency effort, trying to build trust, counter the skepticism. But these profound human rights concerns, coupled with the highly uncertain return on investment, they are powerful, tangible deterrents for that critical foreign capital. Many foreign investors are, quite frankly, still not buying into the grand plan at this stage. Too many unknowns, too many perceived risks. It's a fundamental crisis of trust and viability. The plot definitely thickens, doesn't it? As we peel back these layers, the stakes just seem to get higher and higher. If you're finding this deep dive as captivating, maybe even as concerning as we are, please do remember to like this video and subscribe to Meridian. Your support really helps us keep these crucial investigations going.
Okay, the stage is now set for the main event. Let's bring in our two analysts, our two perspectives. David, the risk-averse realist, and Amelia, the opportunistic globalist. Their arguments, based on the data we've seen, couldn't be more diametrically opposed when it comes to NEOM's future. This should create a truly electrifying debate.
Right. Speaking now from David's perspective, and he pulls absolutely no punches what we're seeing here. It's nothing short of a scaled-back salvage mission. That's his view. His core argument is stark. This project is just veering towards becoming $1.5 trillion spent on a fantasy, a colossal misallocation of resources. The drastic timeline slippage, remember, only 1.5 miles of the line by 2030 instead of 105. That's barely 1.4% of the original vision. That, combined with the deep systemic budget cuts across the board, they are glaring, undeniable red flags for David. For him, NEOM, far from being this beacon of the future, is rapidly solidifying into a $500 billion white elephant, a monument to hubris maybe, rather than genuine innovation. And David points directly to the PIF's own internal probe, the one exposing financial trickery, confirming that high-priced consultants were enriching themselves with very little tangible progress to show on the ground. For him, the fact that only this tiny fraction of the city might materialize by 2030, while insiders possibly benefited from these huge contracts, that just screams poor governance, a lack of oversight, systemic issues that go way beyond simple growing pains. He emphasizes global investors have absolutely noticed these failures. The severe, continuing lack of substantial foreign funding, coupled with those widespread, damning reports of human rights abuses. They are actively scaring off exactly the kind of partner Saudi Arabia desperately needs to share this colossal financial burden. This isn't just bad PR, David argues, it's a direct hit to the project's viability, to its bottom line. The impact in David's unvarnished analysis is overwhelmingly negative, and it's being felt right now. It's bleeding the PIF. A fund that, despite its immense size, is already stretched pretty thin, supporting multiple ambitious gigaprojects. This erosion of funds, he argues, is fundamentally undermining the credibility of Vision 2030 itself, risking the entire transformation agenda. And he poses this powerful, almost haunting question. What if all these billions, potentially trillions, eventually had been invested differently, in realistic, impactful infrastructure, diversifying existing industries, or critically improving domestic education and healthcare for actual Saudi citizens? Come. For David, the prudent move, painful as it might be, is to decisively pause. Or radically downsize NEOM. Staunch the bleeding. Prevent further colossal losses, even if it means publicly admitting that the grandest vision of all has essentially failed. It's about cutting losses before it's too late.
Okay, but then we have Amelia, and she counters this really grim prognosis with a far more optimistic, though still pragmatic, viewpoint. Her core argument is pretty robust. Look, of course, a project of this unprecedented scale is being phased. That isn't failure, that's realism. That's intelligent project management on a massive scale. She views these perceived setbacks, these dramatic recalibrations, as simply inevitable growing pains. For a project that is truly once in a generation, by its very design, it was always intended for a much longer horizon, 50, maybe even 100 years. So to declare it a catastrophic failure in 2025, just a few years into its development, that's not just premature, she argues. It's fundamentally misunderstanding the nature of these kinds of audacious long-term ventures. Amelia sees the recent budget recalibration not as a sign of financial distress, but as a genuinely smart, necessary course correction. By strategically concentrating resources on high-impact, achievable pieces like Trojena, Sandala, the NEOM Stadium, the leadership is choosing measurable, tangible wins over just pure, unbridled hype. And she argues forcefully that these specific public deadlines, like the Asian Winter Games in Trojena, they're not arbitrary. They're external pressures that force concrete delivery, which is good. And she points to early, tangible signs of foreign capital starting to return, citing that massive green hydrogen plant, which did successfully secure significant international partners. This, she argues, is clear proof that global investors will engage and are engaging when the value proposition is clear and the execution model looks sound. For her, that initial branding-first strategy wasn't just vanity. It brilliantly put NEOM on the global map, generated immense interest. Now, the shift is about showing, not just telling, which Saudi Arabia is doing with its regular construction updates. Amelia's conclusion is one of strategic patience. She believes extending the timeline creates vital room to prioritize immediate deliverable needs without ever abandoning the ultimate long-term dream. The true winners here, in her scenario, will be those with foresight and patience, those who understand the decades-long game being played. But hang on, Amelia. Isn't it incredibly naive to just gloss over the sheer scale of these cuts? The leadership turmoil, the international human rights outcry, the literal financial trickery, their own fund uncovered. This isn't just a pivot, Amelia. It feels much more like a wholesale retreat from the original, truly grandiose promises. The vision of 9 million people in a 170-kilometer line by 2030, it's evaporated into a mere mile and a half. How can that possibly be anything but a colossal failure of imagination and, more importantly, execution? This isn't growing pains. This feels like a radical amputation.
A retreat from what exactly? A retreat from pure, unadulterated fantasy. Let's be real. The cold, hard data shows foreign investors the lifeblood needed for this scale are still not buying in. Saudi FDI fell 21% recently. The IMF clearly states they need oil at $90 a barrel just to balance the national books. Is one single green hydrogen plant, however promising, really enough to offset a canceled $5 billion contract, and this fundamental lack of private sector belief, it's bleeding the PIF dry, risking the broader Vision 2030. And the leadership turnover, the financial trickery unearthed by their own probe, that suggests deeper systemic governance issues, doesn't it? Not just some smart, agile adjustment. This doesn't look like a pivot. It looks like a desperate scramble to minimize embarrassment.
But what about the undeniable momentum? The Asian Winter Games in Trojena, the FIFA World Cup Stadium. These aren't just pie-in-the-sky ideas anymore. These are concrete, tangible deliverables, projects with fixed international deadlines that Saudi Arabia has to meet on the global stage. They are prioritizing genuine, visible wins, demonstrating their capability, their commitment to the world. They are building, they are executing. This strategic focus absolutely proves they can deliver. And that credibility surely will eventually attract more capital. It's a marathon, not a sprint, remember?
Or is it merely a desperate scramble? Putting something visible in the ground, anything at all, just to save face. Building an artificial ski resort in the desert for one single event, while the main linear city, the very heart of NEOM, shrinks to a sliver. And the grand population targets are just decimated. That sounds less like strategic diversification and more like an incredibly expensive distraction. A series of costly vanity projects designed to prop up a narrative, while the core economic rationale for the line itself remains utterly unproven and severely underfunded by anyone except the increasingly strained PIF. Frankly, it looks like the world's most expensive PR campaign, designed maybe to obscure fundamental flaws.
But surely that PR campaign is part of the strategy. It got the world talking about Saudi Arabia as more than just oil. They are evolving. They're learning from that initial, maybe over-the-top exuberance. Every single mega project in history, look at the Suez Canal, the Palm Islands in Dubai. They face colossal challenges, massive setbacks. This is just a huge, intelligent rescoping, a vital recalibration to ensure long-term viability for a truly generational project. You're dismissing the sheer scale of the ambition too quickly, aren't you?
But when a generational project needs maybe 100 years to complete and its core defining vision gets reduced to a minuscule fraction of its size within less than a decade, that's not just a challenge. That feels like a fundamental, catastrophic miscalculation of epic proportions. And it carries real, tangible human costs that international investors are very much aware of, regardless of any PR blitz. The numbers just don't lie. So what stands out to you listening to this in this clash of titans? Is NEOM truly a calculated strategic recalibration, a masterful pivot, or is it the ominous beginning of a hubristic collapse? The data, as always, is open to interpretation, isn't it?
Okay, this is exactly where the business show, the thriller element, truly kicks in. Triage. When that grand vision starts to fracture, the kingdom isn't just packing up and going home. No. Instead, our sources reveal this desperate yet profoundly calculated rearguard action. NEOM is rapidly pivoting, shifting from soaring, unbounded ambition to gritty, strategic survival. It's about identifying precisely which parts of this sprawling, multi-component project are actually viable, and which, maybe painfully, must be sacrificed to save the whole patient. They're focusing on the lowest-hanging fruit now. The projects with those fixed global deadlines, precisely to demonstrate some success, any success, to the watching world. And our sources clearly show this tactical refocus in action. Trojena, that futuristic mountain resort, must be completed by 2029 for the Asian Winter Games. Construction is reportedly well underway, slated for a crucial 2026-2027 completion window. Sindela, the luxury island. Technically opened in 2024. Okay, the launch event misfired, but it was still intended to show early success, attract high-end tourism. And the NEOM Stadium,
being aggressively fast-tracked specifically for the FIFA World Cup in 2034. That's a non-negotiable global commitment they have to meet. Other elements, like the Oxagon Industrial Port, the green hydrogen plant, they're being selectively funded, getting priority, especially if they're tied to foreign co-investment, because that de-risks them for the PIF. And the full 170-kilometer line, well, it's clearly no longer a near-term goal. Only a short segment is prioritized now for vertical construction expected maybe late 2025. A critical step, yes, but also symbolic of the scaling back.
And this focused shift, it raises an absolute critical question, doesn't it? Can a grand transformative national vision survive such dramatic public course corrections and still keep its credibility? Or does it fundamentally erode trust? Not just for NEOM, but for all future projects under that whole Vision 2030 umbrella. NEOM is, without a doubt, the undisputed centerpiece of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's entire diversification agenda. Its struggles, therefore, carry this outsized, almost existential significance. It's now abundantly clear that some key Vision 2030 targets, remember, the kingdom ambitiously targeted $100 billion in annual FDI by 2030. They only reached about a quarter of that in 2023. Some of those targets will undoubtedly be deferred, pushed far beyond the original timeline. The goalposts are definitely moving, and everyone sees it. Now, Saudi investment minister Khalid Al-Falih, he's a key figure. He insists NEOM is a generational investment, inherently long timeline, emphasizing it's not realistic to expect profit or large foreign inflows in just 2 to 5 years. He maintains the flywheel of NEOM's economy has only just started turning.
Foundational assets need to come online first, then private capital will jump in. That's the argument. However, analysts are sounding alarms, warning of a potential domino effect if the crown jewel, NEOM itself, significantly underdelivers on its promises. Confidence in Saudi Arabia's broader transformation plans could erode right across the board, making future initiatives from tourism to tech much harder to fund, much harder to execute. It's a very, very high-stakes tightrope walk they're on.
And the real-world impact of these shifting sands, this financial triage, it's immediate, it's widespread, and tragically, it's tangible. This isn't just about abstract financial reports. It's about actual jobs, livelihoods, the very fabric of the Saudi economy. The economic ripples are being felt acutely, especially in construction and engineering. As NEOM scales back, maybe delays payments, hundreds of contractors and suppliers from small local firms to huge international companies, they're facing immense uncertainty. For some, maybe outright financial distress. Even those big global consultancy firms like McKinsey, reportedly earning around $130 million a year from NEOM contracts. They're seeing those lucrative deals curtailed, maybe even canceled altogether. And the impact extends to human capital too. Layoffs, non-renewals for many high-skilled expat workers, people vital to the project's expertise, unfortunately becoming common. This brain drain risks slowing down that crucial knowledge transfer into the kingdom, which was a core goal of Vision 2030. There's also a significant, often overlooked opportunity cost, isn't there? The billions tied up, potentially lost, in NEOM.
That meant less investment for other vital Saudi regions or critical public services like education, healthcare, housing, things that could have directly benefited citizens right across the country. Now, on the flip side, yes, we do see maybe a glimmer of hope. Progress in focused projects like Trojena and Sindala does provide some minor stimulus for their specific tourism and hospitality sectors and the PIF's aggressive budget trimming. Paradoxically, it has helped contain immediate fiscal pressure by preventing deficits from ballooning further from NEOM's previous overruns. But make no mistake, every single decision, every strategic pivot, every cut made at NEOM reverberates far, far beyond its construction site, touching lives, shaping the future of an entire nation. The suspense is definitely building. The future of NEOM truly hangs in the balance. If you've been on the edge of your seat following this high-stakes corporate drama with us, please hit that like button and subscribe to Meridian. You don't want to miss our next deep dive.
So what does come next for this Desert Megasti, this unfolding thriller that is NEOM? Well, there are several key milestones that you, our discerning listener, should be watching very closely, almost like a financial spy keeping tabs. First, the outcome of the NEOM board's ongoing project review. That's the massive internal audit set in motion in 2025. It's expected to be revealed in the coming months. Now, sources close to the project have hinted, maybe ominously, that lots more projects will be pulled in June, pending the review's findings. How decisively the leadership cuts bait on infeasible sub-projects, that will be a crucial indicator. Is NEOM truly embracing a leaner, more realistic strategy? Or just kicking the can down the road? Second, watch for late 2025. After years of huge excavation and ground prep, NEOM plans to begin vertical construction on the line's first crucial segment. Successfully raising parts of that colossal 500-meter-tall structure actually building upward would be a powerful, undeniable proof of concept, a visual testament that it can be done. Any further significant delay in going vertical, though, that will be a glaring red flag. Signaling the core vision, even reduced, remains elusive, maybe even technically insurmountable. Third, that 2026-2027 timeline. Absolutely critical for Trojena, the mountain resort. If construction stays precisely on schedule, ski lifts, luxury hotels, that ambitious artificial lake, already, it will significantly boost morale, demonstrate unequivocally that NEOM can hit a major international deadline. Then looking a bit further ahead, you've got Expo 2030 in Riyadh. NEOM will almost certainly try to piggyback on that. Pitch itself to millions of global visitors, potential investors. By then, NEOM simply needs to have at least some sections open, or demonstrably near completion. To avoid awkward questions, maintain that veneer of progress. And finally, the 2030 benchmark of Vision 2030 itself looms large, a moment of reckoning for the entire kingdom. By this point, Saudi Arabia will be forced to take comprehensive stock, achievements versus very public shortfalls. It's already anticipated NEOM will still be largely under construction by 2030, but the narrative could differ dramatically, couldn't it? A NEOM that has delivered its first phase, even if modest, maybe a few functional miles of the line with its first residents, plus the resort and port actively working. That could potentially be spun as a success in progress, a powerful demonstration of intent. Conversely, if by 2030 NEOM remains mostly just a vast, fragmented construction site with only partial results, it will starkly underscore that huge gap between grand ambition and brutal reality, quite possibly leading to Vision 2030 quietly morphing into Vision 2040 or even 2050 for NEOM, a quiet admission of major delays. We should also be vigilantly watching for further significant funding announcements. Are there new partnerships coming? Maybe even IPO plans for NEOM's subsidiaries? The PIF has already aggressively explored alternative financing models. Remember that key memorandum of understanding with Goldman Sachs? Aimed specifically at attracting global funds. If NEOM manages to secure substantial outside investors or significant debt financing later this year or next, that would signal crucial regained confidence from the private sector. Conversely, continued, public difficulty in raising external capital. That would be a grim confirmation that the skepticism and those fundamental financial pressures stubbornly persist.
So, as the sands of the Saudi desert continue to shift and the global spotlight remains firmly fixed, the ultimate question for NEOM really remains hanging there, doesn't it? Will this colossal project secure its place in history as a triumph? A triumph of futuristic ambition, strategic diversification, a truly transformational blueprint for nation building? Or will it instead tragically become the world's most expensive white elephant? A cautionary tale, maybe, of overreach and unfulfilled hubris. Is this just a temporary setback? A clever, necessary pivot to ensure long-term survival? Or are we actually witnessing the beginning of the end for the desert megacity? The final chapter, it certainly seems, is still very much unwritten.
And maybe consider this as we wrap up. NEOM's tumultuous trajectory, it isn't just some high-stakes business case study, fascinating as that is. It's a real-time, colossal experiment in nation-building, where image, global capital, and deeply personal human lives are all inextricably on the line. What, then, is the truly acceptable cost of a grand national vision? And who ultimately pays the price when that ambition collides head-on with reality? Something to think about.
If you want more no-nonsense stories about power, money, and the systems behind them, subscribe to Meridian Channel.